At this point, we've already added projects to the portfolio and reviewed how the grid works. Now we'll look at the supporting details behind the tasks, things like obligations, evidence, skills, tools, and task-linked apps. This is useful because PortfolioStack is not just showing a task list. It's also helping connect each task to the context, resources, and outputs that may be needed to actually execute the work. I'll start in the Grid tab. The grid gives me a task-level view across every project in the portfolio. Each row represents a task, and as I scroll across the table, I can see columns for obligations, evidence, skills, tools, and apps. These columns let me inspect the supporting information tied to each task without leaving the portfolio. Let's start with obligations and evidence. For each task row, I can see whether there are obligations or evidence items connected to that task. When I click the Obligations chip, a pop-up opens with information about the obligations tied to that specific task. This helps me understand what requirements or compliance considerations may be connected to the work. So instead of reviewing compliance separately from the plan, I can see the obligation directly in the context of the task that supports it. Evidence works the same way. When I click the Evidence chip, I can see the evidence items connected to that task. This helps me answer what output, artifact, or proof point may be produced as this task is completed. That makes it easier to understand how task execution connects back to measurable outputs. Now let's look at skills, tools, and apps. These columns work a little differently. For each task, I can see whether there are skills, tools, or apps connected to the work. When I click a skills chip, PortfolioStack opens a pop-up showing the skills associated with that task. From here, I can click one of the skill options to go deeper. That opens a side drawer with a longer list of related resources, such as learning materials, references, or links that can help me understand that skill area. Tools work in a similar way. When I click a Tools chip, I get a pop-up showing the tools connected to that task. Clicking a tool opens a side drawer with more information and resource links, such as vendor documentation, platforms, or related references. This is helpful when I want to understand what systems or tools may support the work without having to search for them separately. Apps also appear at the task level. When I click an Apps chip, I can see the apps connected to that task. Apps are task-linked workspaces or templates that help create specific project artifacts. Things like checklists, registers, plans, policies, procedures, reports, and other structured outputs. When I click an app, it opens a wider side drawer. This gives me a workspace connected to the task, so I can work on the artifact in the context of the project and task it belongs to. Depending on the app, it may be pre-filled with relevant project or task information, so I'm not starting from a completely blank page. So from the grid, I can move from a task row into the supporting details behind that task. Obligations help me understand what requirements may apply. Evidence helps me understand what outputs or proof points are connected to that work. Skills and tools help me understand what knowledge and systems may be needed. And apps help me create or manage task-specific artifacts. Now let's look at the Resources tab. The Resources tab gives me a consolidated view across the whole portfolio. Instead of clicking task by task, I can see the skills, tools, and apps that appear across all projects in the portfolio. This is useful when I want to understand the broader resource picture. For example, I may want to know what skills show up repeatedly, what tools are involved across multiple projects, or what apps are available to support the work in this portfolio. This view is especially helpful for planning team capacity, identifying knowledge gaps, reviewing tool needs, or just getting a better sense of what the portfolio requires beyond the task list. The grid is best when I want task-level context. The Resources tab is best when I want a portfolio-level view of the skills, tools, and apps connected to the work. That's how to review compliance, evidence, skills, tools, and apps inside a portfolio. In the next video, I'll show you how to export portfolio data to Excel or Google Sheets.